What's good? This is your girl, Coach L. You are officially tuned in to the Radical Radio podcast. I want to thank you guys for joining me. Today is a very special day. If you already have followed, subscribed to the Radical Radio podcast, I thank you so much. If you have not, go ahead and follow or subscribe to the Radical Radio podcast. I really would appreciate it. We are a new podcast, but we have done, I believe, like 9 episodes so far. Um, and I didn't think that it would be wise to just continue on with the podcast and not properly introduce myself, not properly share my story so that you guys can get to know me, the host of the Radical Radio podcast. So my name is Ladina Chisholm, aka Coach L. I am the visionary and founder of Radical Life Ministries. That is radical living in your favor, in your God-given favor every day ministries. And under Radical Life Ministries houses the Radical Radio podcast, Radical Eyewear and Accessories, as well as Radical Life Coaching. I am a certified spiritual life coach. I coach people on purpose, identifying their purpose, walking unapologetically bold and purposely authentic in their purpose. I am very dedicated to helping people to break generational cycles. So that is, basically my coaching niche, identifying generational cycles, pinpointing them, and going through the healing process to become the person that God has called you to be. Very passionate about it, very passionate about purpose. And I am extremely passionate about purpose because for many years I operated and I did not even know what my purpose was. I thought that, I was lucky, that, I just, you know, went through life and I was in charge of my life and, either good things happened or bad things happened. And, I didn't realize that, there was a purpose that God had intended for my life all along that I had been running from. And with that being said, once I was able to really bear down and surrender to God and give my life to Christ for real, um, life began to take a turn for the better. And it was it's an amazing experience because it doesn't stop. It's a lifelong journey. But it has thus far been an amazing journey. It doesn't mean that I haven't had ups and downs and, you know, low moments and things like that. Things have not been perfect. There are weapons that have been formed, but I can say with everything in my being that they have not prospered. And I'm thankful to God for that. So I just wanted to start. I'm going to do a few series so that I could share my story. I'm not going to share too much because I do need to finish and stop procrastinating on something that God has assigned me to do many years ago that I still have not fulfilled. But, I am a work in progress. But I just want to start out with, just basically saying that, I grew up a church girl. My grandfather was a pastor. I grew up with both my parents in the home. I was the only girl for a very long time until my little cousins came along. So I was the baby girl, and I was the one who got all the admiration and the love and the hugs and the anything that I desired and wanted. So I was a spoiled little child. Um, I had the privilege of having both my mother's parents and my father's parents in my life. I was also raised by the village. I am a firm believer in the village. I'm a firm believer in it takes a village to raise a child because I was raised by a village. So I have a lot of aunts, uncles, cousins that are not blood related, but they are village related. So, I was blessed in that respect. Having grandparents who, were entrepreneur, so to speak. Like I said, my grandfather on my mom's side was a pastor. My grandmother on my mom's side was a teacher. And then my grandmother on my father's side, she was a librarian. She was a homemaker. She was a serial entrepreneur. She sold, she made candy, she made dolls, she did all kinds of arts and crafts. Like she was just a serial entrepreneur. And my grandfather, he worked in management, and he also worked in the cleaning service, dry cleaning service rather. So I had very good examples of work ethic and entrepreneurship and community, because my grandmother was a teacher, on the set. She was a teacher at Carmen Elementary School. So she taught for many many years. She is still very much known in the community. My grandfather was a prominent pastor in our community. Um, so I got to see, my grandparents in a lot of different realms. And I'm so thankful for that, because they literally set the foundation for not only me, but my parents, to kind of allow me to be this person that kind of did everything. When I was younger, my mom had me pretty much in everything from ballet, tap, dance. I was in a drill team. I was in so many talent shows, and I did modeling. I did some of everything. I can't believe, now that I'm older, it just, when I look back at it, I'm like, dang, I was a busy little child. But I'm thankful for that, because for many years, having all those things to do kept me out of trouble. I didn't, have any idle time to get into any trouble. Um, but fast forward, my parents decided that, marriage wasn't working for them for whatever reason, because I never, saw my parents argue, or, they sheltered me pretty good, really, really good, actually, to the point where I was like, yo, what you mean y'all getting a divorce? Because I really didn't even know there was anything going on. So I feel like, just being a person that is a cycle breaker, I generally do a lot of digging back into my past to kind of see why things turned out the way for me that they did, and try to pinpoint um, situations that would have caused me to feel certain ways. So, just being older and really pinpointing and traveling back to my childhood, I can attest that, my parents' divorce really rocked me to the core, because it was a major shift and a major change in my life that I didn't even see coming. So that tends to be the trauma for me that really kind of got me in a position where I started spiraling out of control. And when I say that, I was very angry. I couldn't verbalize my feelings. I couldn't really tell them what was wrong with me, but I just was angry. I was like mad at the world. And, I started to develop like ideas in my mind that people weren't there for me like they should have been there for me. And I had a lot of anger, so I like lashed out at a lot of people, mainly being my parents. I lashed out at my grandparents. I just lashed out in a lot of different ways. So with that being said, I ended up having, just anger issues. And with my anger issues came, a lot of disrespectful ways and a lot of rebellion. I began to go to school, and I began to not want to listen to the teachers, not want to listen to authority, not want to listen to anybody, to be honest, because nobody could really help me. So I didn't want to listen to anybody, and in turn that caused me to do a lot of fighting. I didn't have tolerance for nothing or nobody. So it just became, my anger took over my life and just allowed me to just be this feisty fighter. So I began to fight a lot in school, get kicked out of school, and it just became this like snowball effect of like anger, and just spewing out anger everywhere that I went. Um, so once that occurred, I ended up in a relationship. And I, oftentimes I wonder, like, how did you get in this place? Like, why were you so like looking for a relationship? So like, I don't know. Like, I really don't know why I was like in search for a relationship because, even though my mom and my dad had separated, like my dad was active, but I grew up in the era where your parents really don't talk to you about they don't talk to you about relationships. They don't talk to you about sex. They don't have no birds and bees conversations type stuff like that. That just didn't happen. So I got into this relationship and it became a abusive relationship in which I was in for about 12 years and lost myself completely. Even more so, it wasn't necessarily like, it was like anger mixed in with like confusion. So now it's like two spirits that's working against me. It's like the enemy is using both, all the anger to fuel me. And now it's like a confusing type of situation because now I'm trying to figure out how the hell I got in this abusive relationship. And then I'm going through trauma regarding that. So it was just like, yo, the enemy was definitely trying to take me under with the things that I had fallen victim to, I would say. So it just caused me to go through a lot in my life, um to the point where it was just like, man, things were just spiraling out of control. I ended up having a child at 17, 19, then 21 with the person that I was in an abusive relationship with. So just think about it. Like, here I am, not really understanding how to process my anger from my parents' divorce from age 13 on. And then I get into this like puppy love relationship, eighth grade, and I'm totally thrown in love and, can't live my life without this dude. Um, Spending all my time with him and just, yo, it was like a lot. And so eighth grade, I'm in a full blown relationship. Like, I don't even know nothing about a relationship, but I'm in it. And it becomes toxic. It becomes abusive. And so I stay and I go through it through high school, through junior high, through high school, and after high school. I go through this abusive relationship of 12 years. I have three children, three awesome and amazing, talented, handsome children. But I take them through hell. I take them through a lot because I'm going through a lot. So when you go through abuse and trauma and anger and you haven't processed it and you haven't identified it and you haven't done the work to heal from it and you haven't thought about even trying to get therapy or try to figure things out, like, it becomes a cycle. So here it is, I'm in the midst of having anger and confusion try to take me out, and those same things then become a factor in my own children's lives. Um so here I am raising three young Black men as a single parent until, for quite a while, just being single and trying to raise young men and still being angry because now, because I decided to remove myself from an abusive relationship, I have no help with my children. I was told, well, you chose and you made a decision to leave me, so you figure it out on your own. So here I am now, again, abandoned, rejected, confused, angry. So now let's talk about it. We're adding abandonment, rejection on top of anger and confusion. And again, I will say the enemy was using everything against me. And I was allowing it. These are the things that, I had made some choices that caused these circumstances. So, yeah, I, went through pretty much a lot in those formative years of age 12, 13 through all the way to about 25, 26 years old. I was 26 when I decided to leave the relationship. I think 24, 26, something like that. But I decided that enough was enough. I was going to leave this relationship. It was one of the hardest things that I ever had to do in my life because um, I felt like I loved him. Like I remember like when we were younger, like identifying him as my husband. And when we had children, like after I had my third son, it was like, yo, we finna get our tubes tied because we ain't having no more kids. Like this was somebody that you couldn't have told me in 1997. Like you wouldn't have been able to tell me that that wasn't going to be my husband. Nobody could have told me that. Like despite everything that we had went through, despite all the fighting and the abuse and all that we had endured, nobody could have told me that I wouldn't be with this man. So, it was a lot. It was a lot to now be in this place where I'm like, yeah, yo, I'm leaving and I'm done and this is over with. And I've shared this before. Many people may know, may not know, but I can recall one day I always had help with my children. Shout out to my parents because they definitely helped me so much. Where if I needed a break, from my boys, if I needed help with babysitting or anything like that, they always made sure that they helped me. So I remember actually having them come and get my kids. And I was just at home by myself. And I remember like just feeling like life was over. What am I supposed to do now? Like, thought I was going to be with this man for the rest of my life, thought we were going to, make something of this family, thought that, we were going to raise our boys together and we were going to be together, eventually get married and all this stuff. And, I had just been through so much with him and just, I felt like, you know what? I don't want to do this no more. Like, I don't think I can handle this. So I remember taking some Tylenol or something. I don't know. I thought I was doing something. I thought I was finna, overdose. But yo, thank God, like that wasn't his will for me because, I was home alone and, I had taken all these pills thinking that I was about to, overdose and I was going to take my life. But again, that was not God's will for me. Obviously there was still something that he had for me. And I was going to have to try to rebuild my life. And so there goes, the beginning of, me trying to live my life on my own to be a single mother and raise my children. Financially, and I'm a spender. I wasn't taught financial literacy or anything like that. So thank God I have my dad's mom who always made sure that she was my crutch. And, it's not that I'm not bragging on that because that wasn't a good thing to do, but she always made sure that, if I needed anything, that she was there for me to the point where I used to tell my grandma, like, oh, well, I hope, she used to ask me, like, girl, what you gonna do if anything ever happened to me? And I used to tell her, like, I'm going with you. I'm gonna die, because she was my everything, and she really helped me through a lot of difficult times. She was a no nonsense person, and she used to tell me all the time, like, leave that dude, like you better leave him, like I knock him out if he did that to me. And she was just very no nonsense. She didn't understand why I was, kind of like settling for all of this. And so I remember I lost my grandfather, my dad's father. And I lost my grandfather, and I only had two children at the time. I only had my oldest son and my middle son. So my baby boy, he didn't get the chance to meet my grandfather. I ended up being pregnant with him at the time. And losing my grandfather, like my dad's father, he was like the most humble man I've ever met. He was like always there for his family. He never told us no. Um, my grandmother she was a firecracker. He never lit up at her, or he never did anything even remotely disrespectful concerning my grandmother, even when she was talking crazy. Like, he just was like this gentle giant, because he was tall. He was like, man, I've never met anybody like him ever. So he's one of the men of my life that, like, I just, man, like, losing him, it was hard. It was extremely hard to deal with losing him, because he just showed me a side of, I would say he showed me a side of the type of man that I wanted. I'm about to tear up a little bit here. I'm gonna finish this story though, but he showed me the type of man that I wanted for myself, and yeah, that hurt. That hurt. But I still had my grandmother. We felt like, okay, we got to make sure Granny good, and um, shortly thereafter, not too much longer after, my grandmother fell ill. And I truly believe, like, they were married for a long time. And, I think my grandmother just, I don't know, she was never quite right after my grandfather passed. So when she fell ill, it was hard for me to see my grandmother not be the feisty lady that she was. My grandmother was she was she was like me. She was like short, feisty, no nonsense, say what's on her mind, type of chick. Like, we were a lot alike. We butt heads so many times for so many different things. Like, my grandmother she was mean, like, but she was loving with mean, but just kind of like no nonsense. Um, but I'll tell you, my life really took a real change when my grandmother passed. I remember being very active in church at the time, just really trying to um, get my relationship on track with God. And that was the first time that I had ever experienced a, a loss, but understanding that I was going to be okay because I had God in my life. It was the first time. I mean, I'm telling y'all, like, we had this conversation many times. Like, my grandmother, she asked me a lot, like, girl, what are you going to do without me? And I really, like, I literally meant what I said. When I said back to her that I'm just going to die, I'm going to go with you, I literally meant that with everything in my being, because I felt like if I ever lost my grandmother, that I would just not be any good. So when I did, it amazed me, and I knew that it was nobody but the grace of God that kept me through that. So I knew at that point, that was the point of my life where I knew that God was real, because there's nobody that could have told me that I would have been able to stand up at my grandmother's memorial, um, put together and talk about obituary. Like, I mean, it was just like something very supernatural, where I was able to really pinpoint and say, God is truly real. There's no way that I made it through that without God. And I'm thankful for that, because that was a pivotal point in my life where, knowing that God was real, I then began to, like, really explore a relationship with God, and really explore, you know, my faith, um, and really explore this thing. Like, I grew up in the church, but it was more like we went to church because we were told to go to church. Like, we had no choice. It wasn't any, you don't feel like going to church, don't go to church. It was, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord, and you gonna get up and go to church. And there's a lot of rules around church. So we spent a lot of time in church when we were younger. And when I had children, like, I remember straying away from the church and coming back, but I would always like stray away. But when things got really, really bad, I always knew that, I need to get to church. It was something about me just knowing that, when things really, really get bad, you better go to church. And I was starting to use church as a crutch. But at this point, knowing and having the um just having the proof, I feel like having the proof that God is definitely real, and you got to have him in your life if you want to get through things, and you got to have him all the time. That's when a real change in my life occurred, a real shift occurred. So with that, I began to explore my spirituality a lot more. But I don't know, I kind of like felt like, even though you know I had been in church all my life. Once my grandfather, which is my mom's father, I was just talking about my dad's parents. But then also in the midst of like them passing away, my mom's father also passed away, which he was like the rock of our family. And he was a prominent pastor. And I mean, like, you talking about dignitaries that came out for this man, like it was so many people, like people that I didn't even couldn't even imagine, Jesse Jackson, and just people that was like, wow, like he really did make an impact. Like he stumped a footprint, in the community and in this world. And it was still like I hadn't really gotten all the lessons that I needed from my grandfather. And I have to tell y'all a little bit, that story will come a little bit later. But even his legacy, we had been jolted in on my mom's side of the family by losing my grandfather. So it was just like a lot of the legacy, the my grandparents, I was losing my grandparents. So it was like kind of rocking me to the core, where I was like, I gotta kind of get my life together, because you know my rocks, the rocks of our family, we were losing them. So with that being said, I'm gonna kind of end it right there and just say that that was the start of my spiritual walk, my spiritual awakening, so to speak. The loss of the heads of our families, and just the fact that God brought me through those losses the way that he did, and covered me. It really allowed me to see things in a different light. So here I am, by myself, still single. Um, I've experienced loss, and the loss that I had experienced, it brought me closer to God. It brought me to the point of wanting to explore my spirituality, explore the relationship with God even more. So that's how I got there. Um, so I'm gonna stop right there. That's just a part of the story. I just don't feel like, I can, share as much with you guys. I've done, like I said, I've done 9 episodes. So I don't want to leave you guys hanging where you don't know who Coach L is. So like I said, it'll be a series of episodes that I will do, just speaking about my life journey and the things that I have endured and overcome, and kind of like how Coach L got to this radical point in her life. I'll explore those things with you and share those things with you, because I truly believe in transparency and sharing your story to help others. I am a young adult coach. I'm a member success coach. So I coach young adults 17 to 24. And it's funny to me because a lot of times I hear the same repetition that, their parents got divorced and it really shook them, and they kind of spiraled out of control. So I know that God has ordained me to be a coach to young people for that reason, because we have experienced the same types of things. But also in my experience and in my spiritual journey, I was able to identify purpose. So, I was talking to my girlfriend and I was telling her, like, I don't really want to put an age limit on people that I coach regarding purpose because I have been, you know, exploring even elderly people, 60, 70-year-old people who don't know their purpose. So I don't want to put a age limit on, any coaching that I do concerning purpose. But, I just know that God has really graced me to become a coach, and a part of, my assignment and in my purpose is to share my story. It wouldn't be right if I didn't share my story with, the audience that I have here now on this podcast. So I thank you guys, for all of you guys that have listened so far. We'll come back with another episode where I'll continue to share my story. I hope you guys have a great weekend. Love you guys. Be blessed. As always, I want to leave you with this: be you, be free, and be radical. This is your girl, Coach L.